welcome to the Dropship Podcast. Today we're going to tackle a tougher subject. We've been seeing some students, some folks in our Dropship Tribe Facebook group talk about getting suspended from Google Ads or Google Merchant Center or even Bing Ads or Bing Merchant Center, Microsoft, I believe they call it. And we kind of want to talk about troubleshooting that. Here's some things to look out for. Here's why it might be happening. And honestly, I'm going to sit back here and really enjoy John talking about this because he has far more experience than I do. So teeing you up, John, take it away, buddy.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we do see this a lot, and it's something that's probably increased a bit in recent years. Probably, I'd say the last couple of years, we've seen this more often. So what Google does, and yes, this isn't like publicly stated, but what I suspect just from observing many accounts, I think that it happens commonly for new accounts that to get suspended, Google Merchant Center accounts to get suspended for as Google calls it, misrepresentation, which is Google's kind of like catch-all reason. It's very unspecific. If you look at their policy as to what that actually means, it's pretty broad-ranging. It's very unspecific. They do have other more specific reasons why an account might get suspended, which are more serious. But we don't really see that with high-ticket dropshipping sites that are set up, the right way or the way we teach it. But we do see this, and I suspect that Google... it's an auto thing, and I honestly suspect that Google does it as kind of like a gatekeeper tool, right? Because if you set up an account and it gets suspended, you don't respond to them, you don't do anything about it, you're probably not legitimately in business. You might be trying to game the system, you might be selling scammy products, whatever it might be. And let's be honest, anyone who's in any commerce wants access to this platform because it's a great tool for selling, and so it does attract people who are trying to take advantage of customers and maybe take some payments and not fulfill products and things like that. And so Google puts this as a bit of a gatekeeper, I think, to get you to respond and to seek a review of your account. And so I think there's the first important thing to say about this is if either your Merchant Center account or your Google Ads account gets suspended, and they sell it misrepresentation or circumventing systems, which are the two most common ones that you'll see, it's really easy to knee-jerk and think, fuck you, Google. You can't do that to me. This is my business, blah, blah, blah. And I see people doing this. They get really angry about it, and then they go and they click buttons in Merchant Center and say, hey, fix this, Google, blah, blah, blah. You don't do that. That's the worst thing to do, right? What you need to do if it happens is stop and think about it. Because if you knee-jerk and write something back to Google that's a little bit inflammatory or seek a manual review without actually considering if there's anything that you're doing wrong, you will only exacerbate the problem. You'll make it worse. Trust me. And Google will not fix the problem for you any quicker. So don't get upset. It's not Google saying you're doing anything wrong. These are actually auto-applied. At this point, nobody's looked at your account. No physical person, actual real-life person has looked at it. It's an automatic thing. So because their algorithm, their system, whatever, thinks that something's missing. That's really what the misrepresentation thing's saying. So what you need to do is run through a few things, make sure that you've got the right things in place, and then seek a manual review. And you do that within the account. There'll be a button you can press in an email or in your account where you can seek a manual review. And once you click that, it will go into a queue, and somebody at Google on the Merchant Center team or the Google Ads team will actually look at your account, right? And what they're going to do is they're going to look in your account, they're going to look at your website, and basically for the misrepresentation thing, the main thing they're doing is making sure that your website works, your checkout works, and that all of the information about your business between what you've got on your website and what you've put in Google Merchant Center or your Google Ads account, because they look at that too, matches. Right? This is very important. This is something that people often get wrong. Like if the contact details in one or the business address in one is different to what you've got on your website, they're going to say that doesn't match, and you might be a scammer, and so they're not going to help you. So the things that you need to look for, these are the easy high level things that you need to check. The first one is you need to check if you've got all the right information on your website. So you need a phone number. You should have your business address listed on your Contact Us page. Even if you just leave it there while you get your business launched and your ads running, Google does want to see an address, right? You need to have a privacy policy page linked that people can find. You need to have a terms and conditions or a terms of service page linked in to your site. You need, like I say, contact us page needs to be findable. You need to be able to find a returns policy because you have to input that into Google Merchant Center. So and these things should be linked in your header. They should be linked in your footer, right? So that no matter what page the customer is on, they can find them. Now, like I say, you may change that after time, but in order to get your account running, that's where they need to be. The phone number needs to be clearly visible. So once again, if you're somebody that wants to get into dropshipping and e-commerce and do zero customer service and not display these things, I'm sorry, bad luck. You're not going to have any luck here, right? You need to have an email address, once again, that's visible on your contact us page and on your probably usually I'd put it in the footer so it's visible on every page. So these are the things that you need to have visible on your site. Now, if you've checked that and they're there, you then need to go over to your Merchant Center account and make sure that those bits of information are also reflected in your Merchant Center account. So there's a tab in your Merchant Center account when you're setting it up that you fill in called Business Info. It's where you put in the name of your business, the URL. You got to make sure you verified your URL. You're going to put in your business address, customer service phone number, a link to your returns policy. These are all things you're going to put in to turn on Google Shopping and or the free listings if you're going into those. Now, if any of those things don't match what's on your website, then you're not going to get that suspension lifted. So you have to double check. They have to match exactly, right? And so that's what you need to check. Now, following a couple of other things, you need to make sure you haven't put demo products into your shopping feed, right? So one of the things we do when you're setting up your website, you load up some demo products, which don't actually work. They're not live products. And usually, you don't do a very good job of uploading those because you don't need to, right? And so the product data can be really low on those. And so sometimes people forget to, once they're ready to go live, you should be deleting those off your site or at least hiding them so they don't go into your Merchant Center feed, right? So you got to make sure you do that. If you've forgotten to do that, come back. You need to make sure that your checkout is on and that the password is lifted off your Shopify website if you have it on. Once again, when you submit all this stuff to Google, their little bots go to your website and they add products to cart and they go to the checkout page. Right now, if they can't access the checkout page or the front end of your site simply because you forgot to take the password off, or you haven't switched your checkout live yet, and you've gone to set up your Google accounts before you turn those things live, they can't get to your checkout. They're going to think it's not a real e-commerce site, and you're not allowed to be on their platform if that's the case. So you have to check those. Once again, really simple things, but I have seen people miss these. And then going over to your Google Ads account, once again, there's going to be information in your Google Ads account that needs to match what's in your Merchant Center account, and because Google classes it all as a Google account, right? They look at the whole Google account and what all the bits are linked to, and if there's once again differences in other parts of your Google Ads account, it can lead to your Merchant Center or your Google Ads account getting suspended. A couple of other little tips with the Google Ads account. So one of the things you're going to do there is set up a payment profile as well as the actual account. The payment profile is actually a kind of a separate entity. And once again, you have to make sure that the information is pretty congruent in your payment profile. So once again, if you can, make sure the payment method is linked to your business and has a lot of the same names, the same address on it. This is something that people often do wrong is they'll grab somebody else's credit card to pay for the business. So a common one I've seen is a guy, there's a husband and wife team, and the wife sets up the payment profile under her name, but the credit card's in the husband's name. And maybe there's a different address on the credit card to the business address. That, once again, there's incongruencies there, which from a fraud perspective will cause triggers to be kicked in Google's automated backend. And that's a problem. You want to try and get all of these things as tight as possible and matching up. And the last thing with the Google Ads account, which can, once again, cause issues is when you create a Google Ads account, it will often, or it does, get you to start a campaign when you start the account. Now, what you should be doing is as soon as you've opened the account and you've gone through the setup steps, deleting that campaign, because you don't actually want to use that, right? A mistake that people often make is they just set up some crappy campaign that doesn't really lead anywhere, but they leave it running live. And so it's actually running, but it doesn't lead anywhere. It doesn't have a proper URL or a proper destination or something like that. And that will cause your account to get suspended if the first campaign you set up doesn't work. So make sure you delete that campaign as soon as or at least turn it off as soon as you set your account up. Don't leave something live. I've actually made that mistake myself once with a new account. So that's how I learned that one. And the final thing I think with the Google Ads account to say is, and I helped somebody with this just the other day, is one account per business. Don't run ads to two different businesses from the same Google Ads account. That will get you hit with circumventing systems suspension at some point. So one account. The safest way to do it is if you're going to be running multiple businesses, is have a total separate entire Google account for each business. So different merchant center, different Google Ads account, different Google workspace. Just have everything separate, and it's the safest way to ensure that you're not going to get hit with any, sort of suspensions. It's nice and clean. As well, if you go to sell the business and you're going to hand it all off to somebody else, it's much easier to do that. If it's a completely separate Google account, you can do it really quickly and easily.
I think this might be why I've never had issues, John. I think you described it well. Is like the very first thing I do is go to G Suite, Google Workspace, set up that account in my name. Here's the address. I have the MX and the capital one ready to go, just like we teach in our course and in podcasts. I go to set up Shopify, set that up the same way, make sure you have your necessary pages set up with the same information, right? And then you go to Merchant Center, you're doing the same thing, same address, Google Ads, same address, same credit cards, like everything's the same for the reason you just said. When it comes time to move on, I'm just handing you Google Workspace and I'm done. Like everything's in there, change the credit cards, you're good to go. And so perhaps that's why I've never ran into this, but everything you mentioned is, it seems like common sense, right? Like just make sure it's congruent throughout the entire process. And hopefully you laid that out. I know this is a question we've been getting more often than not lately. And so hopefully, whether you're in the course or whether you're in a Dropship tribe, hopefully this made sense to you. Like take it all the way back to the beginning and make sure from the beginning, from Google Workspace on through to Merchant Center, on through to Google Ads, on through to Bing Ads, everywhere, Shopify, everywhere, everything is congruent. And hopefully you don't run into any issues.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say, I mean, it's frustrating, right? I get it. You're excited about getting your business up and running. This happens to you. It doesn't happen to everybody by any stretch, but it does happen to a decent amount of people just because it's automated in nature. It's frustrating. You'll go through the review process. If just the buttons you click don't get anything moving, sometimes you need to call Google and have some communication with Google. That in and of itself can be a little bit frustrating too, but just keep at it because it will get fixed. Usually I see these things get lifted somewhere between a week, 2-3 weeks, right? In some rare occasions, it takes a little bit longer. Once again, it's not the end of the world. Your business is going to be fine. What you've been building is going to be fine. And it is frustrating. I completely understand that, but I cannot think of a single instance where somebody hasn't had this fixed at some point, right? Much different to say Facebook, where if your account gets suspended, and this happened to us at Dropship Breakthru actually, it can be an absolute nightmare to get it fixed. Like you actually can't talk to anybody there most of the time. And yes, there are people out there in the world that can help you with that, but it's much harder. So, well, it sounds like Google sucks a little bit in this instance. They're actually much better with this stuff than other ad networks, to be honest, still always have been, and they still are. So, just hang in there if it happens to you. And obviously, if you need help, reach out to somebody who's been there before.